Hi everyone, and welcome to week 6 of Research Methods and Design. Chapter 11, Field Observation. Field research is a data collection method that involves the direct observation of phenomena in their natural settings. Field observation is usually the preferred data collection method for obtaining information about physical or social settings, behavior, and events. Field observation may be used to make sense out of an ongoing process that cannot be predicted in advance. Field research encompasses two different methods of obtaining data: direct observation and asking questions. They both may yield qualitative and quantitative data, but often offers no precisely defined hypotheses to be tested. Field research in criminal justice may produce either qualitative or quantitative data. Grounded theory is typically built from qualitative field observations, or observations that can be quantified may produce measures for hypothesis testing. Observations made through field research can often be integrated with data collected from other sources. In this way, field observations can help researchers interpret other data. Asking questions through a form of specialized interviewing is often integrated with field observation. Field researchers may or may not identify themselves as researchers to the people they are observing. Being identified as a researcher may have some effect on what is being observed. Appropriate role for observers hinges on what they want to learn and how their inquiry is affected by opportunities and constraints. Here's a couple of ethical questions to keep in mind in each of the roles of an observer. Is it ethical to deceive the people we are studying in the hopes that they will confide in us when we know that they would not confide in an identified researcher? Do the interests of science, the scientific values of the research, offset any ethical concerns? Sampling in field research. Controlled probability sampling techniques are not usually possible in field research, but in some circumstances, researchers can combine probability and non-probability sampling. Snowball sampling is a method for acquiring an ever-increasing number of sample observations. One participant is asked to recommend others for interviewing, and each of these other participants is asked for more recommendations. Modes of recording field observations range from video, audio, and other equipment to unstructured field notes. In between are observations recorded on structured forms. Environmental surveys are examples. Field notes should be planned in advance to the greatest extent possible. However, note-taking should be flexible enough to make records of unexpected observations. Compared with surveys, field research measurements generally have more validity but less reliability. Field research results cannot be generalized as safely as those based on rigorous sampling and standardized questionnaires. Let's finish the presentation of the field observation topic with a video I created with the use of AI.
Eyes on the ground, understanding field observation. It's a simple concept with profound implications in criminal justice. It's about immersing oneself to observe and understand human behavior firsthand. Think of it as anthropology meets criminology. Crime, justice, and human behavior don't exist in a vacuum. They're influenced by social, economic, and environmental factors. Field observation goes beyond numbers to real-world nuances. It informs policy, improves law enforcement, and creates a safer society. Observing the observer's different approaches to fieldwork. Field observation isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. One key distinction is between non-participant and participant observation. Non-participant observation is like watching a play unfold. Participant observation requires the researcher to become part of the action. Each approach has ethical implications and practical limitations. Beyond the surface, uncovering hidden truths. The beauty of field observation lies in its ability to reveal what often remains hidden from traditional research methods. It offers a rich, contextualized understanding of human behavior that goes beyond statistics and surveys. Consider a study on the effectiveness of community policing. While crime data might show a decrease in reported crime, Field observations could reveal improved relationships between police officers and residents, a greater sense of community trust, and a reduction in the fear of crime, factors that wouldn't be captured by statistics alone. Furthermore, field observation allows us to witness social dynamics in action. We can observe how power structures operate, how individuals navigate complex social environments, and how group behavior influences individual choices. These insights are invaluable for understanding the root causes of crime, designing effective prevention programs, and fostering a greater sense of justice within communities. Navigating the field, challenges and considerations. While immensely valuable, field observation is not without its challenges. Gaining access to research settings, particularly within the criminal justice system, can be difficult. Institutions may be hesitant to allow outside observers, and individuals involved in criminal activity are unlikely to be forthcoming about their actions. Furthermore, researchers must be acutely aware of their own biases and how these might influence their observations and interpretations. Objectivity is crucial, and researchers must constantly challenge their own assumptions and strive for a balanced perspective. Safety is another paramount concern. Researchers often work in unpredictable and potentially dangerous environments. They must take appropriate precautions to ensure their well-being without compromising the integrity of their research. This might involve establishing clear protocols for handling difficult situations, maintaining open communication with trusted contacts, and prioritizing personal safety above all else. The ethical tightrope, balancing knowledge and responsibility. Field observation in sensitive areas like criminal justice requires a strong ethical compass. Researchers access personal information and private conversations. Confidentiality is essential. Protecting identities and avoiding harm is crucial. Use pseudonyms, alter details, and store data securely. Informed consent is a cornerstone of ethical research. Obtain informed consent, explaining the research purpose and risks. In covert observation, consent may not be feasible. Researchers must weigh benefits against risks and prioritize well-being. Shaping a safer future. The enduring value of field observation. Despite the challenges and ethical complexities, field observation remains an indispensable tool in the pursuit of a safer and more just society. It offers a level of understanding that simply cannot be replicated by other research methods. By venturing into the field, by immersing ourselves in the realities of crime and justice, we gain insights that can shape policies, improve law enforcement practices, and empower communities. We can move beyond abstract theories and grapple with the complexities of human behavior in real-world settings. Field observation allows us to see the human faces behind the statistics, to understand the social and environmental factors that contribute to crime, and to identify opportunities for intervention and prevention. It is through this intimate, grounded understanding that we can truly begin to address the root causes of crime and build a more just and equitable society for all.
Let's now summarize Chapter 12, Agency Records, Content Analysis, and Secondary Data. Last week, we learned how, with survey research, the field researcher gathers their own data. Other ways of collecting data do not involve intrusion by observers. This chapter aims to introduce you to three sources of existing data and their applications in criminal justice research. First, there are data collected by federal, state, and local agencies such as Justice Statistics data, Bureau of Prisons data, even data from the New York City Police Department. Secondly, it is content analysis, the analysis of communication. These are social artifacts, written documents, or other types of messages. Thirdly, secondary analysis of existing data. This information is frequently used in criminal justice research. In a general sense, most data you obtain from agency records or research projects concluded by others are secondary data. The units of analysis represented by agency data may not always be obvious because agencies typically use different and often unclear units of count to record information about people and cases. Once units of analysis are defined, then sampling agency records is relatively simple. A target population and sample frame may be readily defined. You need to be alert for potential biases in the sample frame. Researchers must be especially attentive to possible reliability and validity problems when they use data from agency records. Key to evaluating the reliability and validity of agency records, as well as the general suitability of those data for a research project, is to understand as completely as possible how the data were originally collected. Follow the paper trail and expect the expected are two general maxims for researchers to keep in mind when using agency records in their research. Following the paper trail and expect the unexpected both involve examining the data collected and how it was collected. Many agency data are not designed for research. They collect data because the law requires them to do so. Content analysis is the systematic study of messages and the meaning those messages convey. It may be applied to virtually any form of communication. Possible artifacts include books, magazines, films, sports, speeches, TV programs, letters, laws, etc. This type of analysis is particularly well suited to answering the classic question of communications research. Who says what, to whom, why, how, and with what effect? Secondary analysis is the analysis of data collected earlier by another researcher for some purpose other than the topic of the current study. Archives of criminal justice and other social data are maintained by the ICPSR and the NACJD for use by other researchers. The advantages and disadvantages of using secondary data are similar to those for agency records. Data previously collected by some researcher may not match our own needs. For this week, make sure to complete Week 6 exam and the respective discussion board by the end of the week. Before you attempt to complete the assignments, read Chapter 11 and 12 of the Maxfield textbook to gain the necessary knowledge to ace your exams. Also, study Chapters 11 and 12 of the Pearshock textbook and keep working on the final research project. Have a great week, everyone, and reach out to me if you have any questions.